Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last webinar before the summer break. Yes, I will just invite our speakers to mute their microphone if they're not unmuted. So my name is Esra. I'm from ZWE Europe, and I'm really happy to welcome you to I think this is the fifth webinar this year from the ZWE Europe Live series. And this afternoon we're going to dive the question on deposit return schemes. As I often explain, we did a consultation earlier this year, I think earlier at the end of last year actually, asking you what topics you would like to learn more about, and DRS was definitely one of the key instruments that you wanted to know more about. And of course, all the communication these days about plastics pollution probably explain a lot this growing interest. And of course, with an average of 90% of return rate for the targeted items, deposit return schemes for economic incentives ensure real circularity and prevents plastic littering into the environment. So that's probably one of the aspects of the DRS that we'd like to share with you today, and start maybe with a general introduction on DRS. We'll then dive on the case of Estonia, and then we'll go to Spain to hear more about DRS as a way to prevent marine litter. So the ZWE Europe Live series has the chance to bring together a set of amazing speakers and panelists. I'm really happy this afternoon to have three experts who will help us understand more the potential of DRS, its impact, and also its challenges. I will briefly explain a bit how it works. So our webinars, we have three panelists. Each of them have the difficult task to guide you in the topic for 10 minutes only, 10 minutes presentations, and then we have some clarification questions. So that's a place for you, the chance for you to ask your questions. So please feel free to use the Q&A box. My colleague Agnese is helping me in the chat space, so if you have any questions. And of course, make sure to just introduce yourself. We're really always happy to know who's in the room. So to start with, I'm just going to tell you more about our three speakers. So today we have the chance to have Clarissa Morawski, who's the managing director at WeLoop. So Clarissa co-founded the WeLoop platform, that is a European association comprised of industries, NGOs, and cities that collectively supports policy to further implement the circular economy, and one of the key aspects being DRS. With Clarissa, our second speaker will be Rauno Ral, who's the managing partner and consultant at Earth Care Consulting. So Rauno was actually the general manager of the Estonian deposit system for 10 years, I believe, which is the biggest challenge was to turn the boat around and put DRS to work in an efficient way from both the environmental and the financial outlook. So Rauno is really going to help us understand the Estonian model. And our third speaker is Cesar Sanchez Lozano, who is the communications director at Retorna. So Retorna is a Spanish platform for NGOs that advocate for zero waste policies in Spain, and one of the instruments being also DRS. So without further delay, I know you don't want to hear a lot from me, but you want to hear more from our speakers. I will invite Clarissa Morawski to share her screen and help us understand what is DRS, and actually also help us understand what is happening from the industry side these days on beverage containers. Something just a short clarification, giving some more time for Clarissa to share her screen. In this webinar, we're talking both on single-use containers, so DRS on single-use containers, and also DRS on refillables. And if you have any questions in the distinction between these two types of systems, feel free to use the Q&A box. Clarissa, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. I'm just trying to get, for some reason, it's not working suddenly. is there any way that you can put it up on your end, girls? I just don't have the
Yes.
screen I had before. I'm very, very sorry about this.
No worries. We're going to share it right now. So is there anything you would like to add so we don't see the presentation?
Actually, I think I've got it now, ladies.
Yeah, can you see it?
Just about. I think I can go on. I think I'm there.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties, classic. Okay, thank you very much, Ezra. I'm just going to look at the time, make sure I only talk for 10 minutes. So first of all, I'd like to take all of the viewers through sort of a quick introduction to deposits and give them sort of the lay of the land based on what I think are some of the most important pieces of information to know today. So first of all, there are a number of reasons why things are completely different today than they were 2 years ago or even a year ago on the subject of deposit return. And I'm going to walk through the 5 what I call trend considerations which have really led to where we are today. And the first trend consideration is that there's a rising share of financial obligation for producers of beverage containers, the Cokes, the Pepsis, etc., the water companies, for a greater financial share of extended producer responsibility costs to finance not only the management of their materials, but also the cleanup of litter, which will be coming in the new single-use directive, which will be published any day now. That there's a requirement for beverage producers to, and other producers of products that do tend to end up as litter, to finance part of that litter cost. So that's a very serious financial pressure. In addition to that is that traditional separate collection systems, those costs are going up at the same time because of a light weighting of your average waste ton compared to what it used to be. There's more plastics in the system, there's less glass, less plastics, paper. So all of that has a very large financial implication on producers, which is why they're rethinking how their existing management systems are looking like. The second piece has to do with recycled content. I won't go into a lot of details as to why it's so important for a beverage container that is a single-use container, be it a can or plastic or glass. It's very important that it contains recycled content. In other words, an old bottle that was recycled into a new bottle. The higher the level of content, the far better the eco footprint of that individual functional container is. There is also a new required, legislated required minimum content in plastic beverage bottles of 25% by 2025 and 2030 in all beverage plastic bottles by 2030. So that's another big pressure, in particular on producers, to get access to more and better quality beverage container plastic. Then, of course, we have the third key element, key consideration, is we're seeing higher recycling targets, both at a voluntary level, where we're seeing pledges by industry because they know that this is a big problem and they have to do, at least be perceived as doing something to change it. And also, in particular, from the European Federation of Bottled Water, which has made a commitment to 90% collection by 2025. But more important is we have legislated targets that are new. As of a year ago, plastic packaging, all packaging, will have a 55% real recycling target by 2030. And in particular, of interest to this group, is that once the publication of the Single-Use Plastics Directives goes through, then by 2029, 90% of those beverage containers should be collected. So quickly, the terms of the Single-Use Directive are beverage bottles with a capacity of up to 3 liters, including caps and lids. So I just want to frame that now. We're not just talking about the bottle without the cap, we're talking about the bottle and all sizes of the bottle except for the really, really big ones. So look at this more holistically. This isn't simply about a system that could cover the containers that you consume out of the home. This is a system that covers all beverage containers. The last key piece is how we calculate those calculations to determine what our target, if we've met it or not. This too is going to be much more rigorous, and it's not going to allow for the inclusion of any contaminants up to the point where it's recycled. They all have to be subtracted. The rules are either just published or about to be published, And they're very, very strict, so that puts even further pressure on getting to high targets and looking for solutions that'll get us there. And finally, and this is probably the big one that pushed many stakeholders to move on this issue, is there's more pressure around plastics in the marine environment. We've seen these pictures all over the place. And of course, we also saw this action that was undertaken by Break Free from Plastics to actually count who are the most common brands showing up on beaches across the globe. And the results were, of course, shocking. And I think it was a real shock to some of the brands to see their names up there as the top 10 worst polluters in the world. So the combination of those three things have really pushed deposit return to a point where today we are looking at it, frankly, all over the world. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that looks like. So just again, that's the European Federation of Bottled Water's commitment. Understand that this is an industry that has been fighting deposits for 20 years, and they are completely coming around on this. And I think you'll see soon that they'll be publicly advocating for the introduction of deposit return systems, at least in this part of the world. I haven't seen much about the rest of the world, but keep an eye on that. So one thing we know about deposit return is, just quickly, it achieves high rates. If you look at the programs in Europe, minus Croatia, because we don't have good data, you'll see a median and a mean of 90%, which is probably why, and here you have the actual text from the law that is about to be published, which shows a 90% target by 2029, and 77 as an interim target by 2025. This is probably why European Commission, in a record-breaking 8 months, passed this law, because it's an emotional issue, I believe, for legislators. So this is really a great opportunity in history. So what does it look like across the globe? It looks like this. We have Australia, the continent of Australia, I think will be the first continent in the world to go deposit return all the way. We have now most of Australia covered. We will see Western Australia start in 2020, and likely Victoria, the second largest province, in 2021. This is the situation in Europe. Those countries in light green are the countries that haven't introduced yet, but for all intents and purposes, they either have legislation which is passed or legislation which is soon to be passed, or they're going through, like England is going through a consultation on how to design the system. Scotland has decided how to design it. So these are all sort of jurisdictions that are on their way to implement by as early as 2020 in Malta, and then 2023, 2024. So pretty big populations here. Take a look at Romania, 20 million people. Turkey, 80 million people. It will be the second largest deposit country for single-use beverages in the world, next to Germany. Even Portugal, 10 million people, a big impact. And those countries hopefully will set a good example for the other laggards in the system, like Spain, France, Italy, and a few others out there. This is a quick look at United States, 10 programs, only one that's worth talking about, top left corner, Oregon, hyper modern system, constantly upgrading itself, just increased its deposit, hitting 90% today. Far better than all the other programs in America. This is Canada. Suffice to say, we have deposits all over the place, all different. I wouldn't look at Canada as an example of best in class. They're a little bit old school, but nonetheless, the performance is quite good. I want to spend the last few minutes now talking about frequently asked questions. And many of you, as you start to discuss deposits, you're going to be confronted with these questions. So I'm hoping we can go through them one by one. And if you have any follow-up, please don't hesitate. So the first one you're going to get is, why charge a deposit on beverage containers and not on other packaging? And the answer is that beverage containers are purchased in large amounts on the go, and not in your house where you're generating a lot of the other packaging, which tends to be collected in your household packaging system. Somewhere between 25 and an absolute low to what industry tells us about 40%, depending on the jurisdiction, of drinks are consumed out of the home. So think about locations like parks, beaches, public spaces, in transit, walking around, in schools, universities. Many of these commercial locations don't have facilities set up to collect separately recycled materials. The next one is, of course, beverage containers. As a packaging unit, a functional unit, they actually do consume a lot of energy in terms of manufacturing them. Think in terms of aluminum cans, high energy content, plastic bottles as well. And they also contribute a significant volume of the waste stream. So you could consider them as a priority package that we need to really establish maybe a special system for because of these two considerations. A third consideration is that they comprise a lot of litter. Somewhere between 14 to 40% of litter by count is beverage containers, and that's assuming all the beverage containers and sometimes even parts of beverage containers like caps. And then we also know that if you look at beverage litter from a volume or a weight perspective, which is more meaningful calculation, it's somewhere between 75 to 90, depending on the densities and the size of the containers. So all this to say, beverage containers are a real problem. And this is just your typical garbage can here in Barcelona, where there's a lot of beverages, empty beverages, heading to the waste dump and filling up a lot of space in the bin, which requires, of course, managing by the municipality. There's another great example that I see all over the city. Next question, why can't municipal separate collection achieve the same rates? And this is a question that's being discussed in countries like France, Czech Republic, Spain. Is it possible without a deposit system we can hit 90% real recycling? Well, the answer is highly unlikely. Residential curbside recycling or separate collection systems don't generally recycle what they can't target. And this gets back to away from home. We don't have systems in place for away from home, or good ones at least. Of course, in any recycling system, not everyone has access. So right off the bat, in a perfect system, let's say 95% have access, can recycle, at least 5% won't, and that's going to affect your numbers. And then, of course, of all those that can recycle, the 95%, not everybody is going to want to participate. So let's say, best case example, you're looking at 90% of that group. So now you've got about 80% of the population is going to do it, but they're not necessarily going to do it right. And you're going to see more losses in the system. So public space is very expensive. It's very difficult for municipal curbside systems to do this properly. And this is a great slide from the packaging sector themselves, who some years ago articulated that because of these factors that I've just showed you, you get lower and lower chances of meeting high targets. And they said, best case scenario, everyone has access, everybody's participating, most people are doing it right, you're going to hit about 69%. That's a best case. So right there you can see the science that answers the question to why can't we achieve the same rates with our existing curbside system. Next question, what is the impact on municipal recycling? Well, the impact is that we looked at it and we did some research all over the world, and we compiled now 27 different studies that looked at that impact, that financial impact on a municipal budget when you introduce deposit system, and they already probably have some sort of curbside recycling in place. You can find these case studies, a summary of them, in French and English and Turkish on our website in the fact sheet section. And basically what they all said is that yes, there is reduced money coming in from recyclables in the sorting centers, whether they're owned or not by a municipality. There are reduced revenues for sure. But at the same time, the municipality is going to save in collection costs because there's less beverage container material to collect in waste, recycling, or litter, and collection is a very, very high cost of waste management. There's less processing to pay, less tons going in the processing center, and less disposal fees when you're getting rid of your waste, because there's a lot of beverage containers that are still in the waste stream. So net, municipalities save money. This fact sheet is a fantastic resource in terms of providing evidence of studies, all sorts of studies done by all sorts of consultants, and the analysis says basically the same thing. Next question, price elasticity. You'll hear this from producers. Will deposits cause my sales to go down? This is a really important key question, and you're going to be confronted with it if you are in any way starting a campaign or participating in a campaign? And the answer is, first of all, there are many variables that affect sales: temperatures, economic climates, if there's a sales tax benefit in a neighboring country or state. All of these factors, independently or collectively, can affect sales. So it's very difficult to look at simply deposits and the impact that they might have on sales. But we do know, because I've personally been researching this for 20 years, that to date there actually is no credible research available that attributes a direct decline in beverage sales as a result of a new deposit system. We also know, and this is really important, that any studies that purport to make these correlations should be carefully considered in terms of assumptions, units of measurement, and methodology used. And finally, and this is really the most important thing, your deposit, you get it back. So it's a net zero spending loss gain situation. You're not up or down. If you participate, you get your deposit back. So if you have less money when you first purchase a deposit, beverages, you've spent $2.40 on deposits, so you can buy less in that one shopping trip. When you come back and then you have an additional $2.40 in your pocket, you can buy more. So it ends up being a net spend loss of zero. So that's the answer to that question. And we have looked in many jurisdictions to see what was the result. This is an example of California, to see if there was a change in sales when they introduced a higher deposit. And one thing that you'll see is you're not looking at whether sales go up or down. You're looking at, was there a disruption in the trend where sales were going? So if they were going down, did they go down faster? If they were going up, did they go up slower? And what we've looked at is that trend, and to see if there's a disruption. And we haven't witnessed any disruptions in trends around this issue. So I have more information with other charts like that if anyone needs the rebuttal piece to that question. And finally, will green dot fees increase? Now, this is for those jurisdictions where you have an existing green dot system and you might have one green dot operator or many, because it's a competitive system like in some parts of Eastern Europe. And they are often thinking that because all the material will be pulled out of the yellow bin, let's say, that the fees for the other packaging in the system are going to go up. And what we can tell you is there is no evidence of cost increases to producers in terms of their existing EPR obligation. This is like a green dot system where a deposit system was introduced. And in fact, we actually have case studies. After the introduction of the deposit, the by weight, so the per kilogram fees on different materials in the green dot system did not go up in Germany, in Ontario, Canada, and Lithuania. This is where we had the opportunity to look at fees before deposits and then green dot fees after, and they didn't go up in these jurisdictions. So again, really important evidence to support the claim. Finally, I'm going to leave you now. This is quickly our 5 key objectives at Reloop. Please visit our website. You will find on our website an incredible assortment of deposit resources and videos in 14 languages. Please go to our website. It's probably one of the greatest compilations of supporting information. And if you're looking for something, send us an email. We'll get back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Clarissa, for your presentation and sticking to the time. I think you had a lot to cover, and we have a few comments and questions from participants. I propose you to maybe clarify 1 or 2 points. Xena from Barcelona is making a comment saying that, but when you consume beverages away from home, at least in Spain, in Barcelona, you have recycling bins everywhere in the street. So I think it will be interesting to comment on why DRS is more effective. You touched base on this in your presentation, but why is it more effective than actually having curbside collection or just like recycling bins in the street? What is happening, and maybe why this other system is a bit less effective?
Well, I mean, speaking from Barcelona, again, it gets into the point of, for away from home consumption, there are bins all over the city, but there's also areas where you don't have bins, like the inner core, the old town. There are bins, but they're not as easy to find as the garbage bins. There's more garbage bins than recycling bins. And the general rule of thumb is if you want to encourage recycling, you should make garbage more difficult and just less convenient. And that's not the situation in most cities. Is garbage is more convenient, and that's why when you walk around, you do see beverage containers in a lot of garbage bins. And I would, you know, anybody out there, I don't know if you do this, but I always do this in any city I am. I look in the recycling bin to see how clean it is, and I look in the garbage bin to see how many beverage containers are in there. And unfortunately, the public, in particular tourists and adults from the age of adult males from the age of 18 to 34 are the worst recyclers. And this is really where we're not achieving what we could achieve with existing systems, where we even have bins in the outdoor sector, in the away from home sector. Those bins get really, really contaminated. They're very, very costly to service, and you just won't get the kind of capture that you get in a deposit system.
Thank you, Clarissa. Can you stop also sharing your screen? Sorry, I forgot to ask. Yeah, indeed, there's this. It exists, but as you say, the idea is to make it harder in a way. So I'm looking into the other comments, and there was a question or a comment from Sabine from Switzerland, saying that Swiss consumers achieve 99% of the recycle of PET beverage containers, and less than 97% when free riders are included. What do you say to the system working without deposit? Yeah.
Sorry, I think that the numbers are a funny thing. And I think that we need to look at the new rules of calculation in terms of how we calculate recycling. That's not done today, so we're looking at what the EU now wants us to do as of 2020. You have to extract out all of the contaminants, the labels, the water, and that's not currently calculated in that way in Switzerland. I think that Switzerland is quite unique also. I think that there is something culturally unique about the Swiss. That's what I'm told. So sort of a two-part answer. Swiss is a unique country, that they have probably some of the greatest recycling behavior on the planet. And also, I don't exactly believe the numbers, because I think we're looking at recycling, not collection. And generally, green dot systems or non-deposit systems do a weight-based collection number, which is not as accurate in terms of real recycling as the deposit systems, where we claim 90%. That's real recycling. That's 9 bottles out of 10 bottles going into the recycling box, whereas doing it by weight is a little bit more problematic.
Thank you very much. I'll keep the other questions because they might be also interesting for our other speakers. So thanks a lot, Clarissa. We're now moving to our second speaker. We're moving to Rauno Rau, who's going to explain us a bit more the case of Estonia. So Rauno, the floor is yours.
I see. Okay. Okay, hello. So let's start with the deposit tour. First of all, what I always hate is discussions that one or the other systems is better than the other, like container is better than deposit or vice versa. You know, what is a deposit system? It is actually a supplementary system to the current logics. Is it container, curbside, or some other solution? It is basically a circular economy solution of the brewers industry, of the beverage industry in general, to really tackle the issue of their major part of packages. Is it cant, PET, etc. So what I want to say is that all of the different systems, is it container, is it curbside, it's needed anyway. And in Estonia, for example, we have one deposit system, and we have 3 different container system, in addition also packages bag solutions. But now, as we are all about deposit here, so shortly, very quickly about, to my mind, what are the pluses and minuses of a deposit system. Clearly, it is dealing with the highest risk littering packages, including the marine littering issue. And basically, you can collect and recycle 85 to even up to 98% of the packages, beverage packages put on the market. And as it's very clean, you drink it, you put it in your car, or you put it in your kitchen corner, and next time you go to your collection, you go to your retailer, you just return it. So it doesn't get contaminated. And if it doesn't get contaminated, it means that it's very clean and it's really 100% recyclable, not just collectible, because quite often we see systems of quite considerable collection rates, but it is quite questionable about the recycling rates. It also helps to develop the reusable packages development. In Estonia also, we had a voluntary refillable system before, but then it became part of the mandatory deposit system, one-way and refillables, and it has really developed a system giving a lot of new different refillable types and investments from the producer side into the washing machinery and all the equipment in the factories, etc. And you know what is it all about is that we all want to be green. We all think green. Sometimes we don't act green. So because of the monetary incentive, just the monetary incentive makes everybody move. Even those who are not so much for the environment or who don't have time to work on the environment, they want to get their money back. As easy as that. And that's the key to a deposit system. And of course, sometimes why deposits is hated in some countries is because it's very transparent. There's no vague tonnage or whatever numbers. It's always very clear. Every single piece unit put on the market is seen, as well as every single package which is collected from the market. The sales and the return is very SKU, each barcode, each product based in units. So if you talk about the minuses, it's clear it's related as money is involved. It's related to different fraud issues. Is it consumer, producer, retailer related fraud? And it's something that has to be tackled from day one. You have to have a very functioning controlling system. We did the bad way, didn't have the controlling in the beginning and had very, very many difficulties in 2005, 6, 7 when we started. And later we installed full controlling logics and got the fraud issue under control. For the consumers, it's very simple logic, but it's quite complex from the so to say kitchen side. So it's a lot of stakeholder management. There are big producers in the system, small producers in the system, retailers, importers, big retailers, small retailers. So it's always a challenge because everyone has its own interests, and the management really has to live up with that to somehow harmonize all of those interests within the deposit and to make it work for the environment, not of different business interests. So for the consumer, it's very simple. You know the logic. The picture on the right shows that if you look closely, that it is the price of the product plus deposit. It's quite often it is mixed that wow, the deposit will increase the prices of beverage products. It's total nonsense because by the law, it is already required that it has to always to be separate. It is product price plus deposit. In the Estonian case that you can see on the picture, it's 10 euro cents for this big PET bottle, which is put as a plus to this product price, and it shouldn't be mixed. So from the retail consumer side, it's very simple. You go to your shop, you buy your bread and milk, also your Coke and water. You pay this deposit money, and next time you maybe go to buy bananas or apples, then you take your empties to the same retailer and you get your money back through the cash register to purchase new products, or you can also take out cash. But usually retailers are interested in the deposit system because more than 90%, even 95% of the checks are basically clear, meaning cash is not paid out, but consumers use the money to spend it in the shops. So here are just a couple of examples of inside collection in a big and a small shop. On the left, you can see a standard supermarket with 2 RVMs. This is a technical collection, reverse vending machines. On the right side, you can see a small countryside shop just taking about 1.5 square meters of room in a really small, maybe 2,000-3,000 people village. Or if some retailers are not able to use their current facilities, or they don't want to give away a warehouse room, etc., then you can see here a couple of pictures left on this from Estonia, the right from Lithuania, that such kiosks, outside solutions are used. There might be something like 16 to 24 square meters put next to the shop and work as a standalone outside collection options for the consumers. Or there are smaller shops, village shops or fuel gas stations, for example, where there is manual collection. And here you can just see a couple of different manual collection equipment that is used. On the left, actually, it is a picture from, not Estonia, this is a picture from Scandinavia, from a petrol station where the package is scanned and then put to the bag. And on the right side, you can see equipment that we give free of charge to the retailers in the rural areas to help collect with the manual collection. So, who are the major stakeholders in a system? Well, it's a producer responsibility organization. It should work as non-profit logic. But the central TRS is usually formed by the retailers and the industry meaning the beverage producers. Basically, these are the two who also interact in the money flow. Like, for example, if a bottle of Coke is put on the market, it goes as product price plus deposit. The retailer puts it on the shelves, the product price plus deposit. And the consumer buys it, product plus deposit. So at the same time, the industry basically pays this deposit money to the central deposit organization that is kind of like besides its everyday actions, it's also kind of like a deposit bank, because the next time the consumer goes with its empties to the retailer and claims its money, the central organization actually pays this money to the retailers. So you can later on, if you wish, to see the presentation with the money flow and the material flow. And in most deposit countries, the central organization has its own handling centers, but the recyclers are their close cooperation partners, meaning before the first sorting and preparation for recycling is done, then all the materials are sent according to materials sent to the recyclers. For example, here in Estonia, in Lithuania, in many countries, we separate glass by colors: white, green, brown. We take steel, separate steel from aluminum cans. We do some separation for the PET, for the plastics, etc. So that all needs to be done before it's sent to the full recycling. The Estonia system started already 14 years ago, May 2005, and it works as a producer responsibility organization on non-profit principle. So we are basically a limited liability company, but we are controlled and accredited by the Ministry of Environment. Each year, they come and audit the system. And the Estonian system ownership is 75%. You can see here different producer-related associations like the brewers, soft drink producers, importers, and 25% is the ownership is from the retail association. Behind that in Estonia, I think is more than 70% of the whole market. It depends on the system, on the country. In Sweden, for example, it's 50-50. It's retailers versus producers, but mainly these are the stakeholders that have to make the initial investment to meet the targets pushed by the government, and that's why they are on the same boat. If we talk about the Estonian system, then we have 350 producers and importer contracts, basically. From day one, since 2005, we have almost 16,000 packages in the register. But which is more important, that every day, roughly 5,500 packages are put on the market and at the same time collected from the market. They are the so-called active SKUs, active products that we have to deal with every day. This is the sales side. If we look at the collection side, it's about, in Estonia, as we are quite a small country, it's about 820 collection points, manual or automated, doesn't matter, and altogether 570 automated reverse vending machines at retail shops. In addition, on a volunteer basis, we do cooperation with HoReCa, the hotels, the restaurants, the catering. And the reason is very simple, because we do cooperation with biggest HoReCa sector clients, because we don't want them to go to the retailers' consumer-orientated collection points, because then there will be just too long queues, and it will be, especially in the summertime, it will be quite unfortunate for regular consumers. So we help the biggest HoReCa clients to actually give them free transportation, give them free bags for the empties, and do cooperation in that sense. In the Estonian system, we have the product categories which are under deposit: soft drink, water, beer. You can see it here: cider, perry, low ethanol, alcoholic beverages, juice, concentrates. And we have three packages categories, which is plastics, mainly PET, but also some other metals, cans, both steel and aluminum, and glass, both one-way and refillables. And since 2015, we harmonized all the deposit values to a unified 10 euro cents, which has worked quite well, though now we are already maybe thinking about some increase in the future. As the logic is very simple. When at some point there is no logic behind the decrease of recycling rates, then you have to think about what is the reason. And in 2015, we saw that there was heavy decline in PET bottle collection. For us, already 5% is quite heavy, 5-6%. And then we discussed with the ministry and unified it up to 10 cents. So just a small understanding. When we started, the first full year was 2006. We had about 80% of manual collection and 20% of technical, meaning the RVM, reverse vending machine collection. And then we said that, okay, you are a green organization, but at the same time, you are totally ungreen because your trucks are driving all around Estonia with a lot of empty air in the cars, which was true because most of the packages were not compacted. So we did a shift in the retail handling fee logic, meaning we gave the highest incentive for retailers for the packages that were already compacted, PET and can in the shop. And actually, we changed the system within 9-10 months. Which constitutes to the fact that today already 80% of the whole material coming from retail shops to our center is compacted, which means that we squeezed a lot of air out of the logistics system. And you know, it is not just about collecting the packages. It is also about how to do it most CO2 friendly, or to have the less emissions there. So, for example, if you can see a comparison here. On the right, you can see one big compacted bag of cans, and actually it equals to at least 4 uncompacted cans. So, and you can imagine what it means in one truck. So we calculated, for example, when we made the change that per year we had at least 1,500 less trucks coming into our factory because we do already compaction at the retailer shop. This is just one small item to make you understand that it's sometimes the devil is in the details, and it is very important how to design the system in the detailed part from the technical side. So the numbers, you have to take into consideration that Estonia here, all the Baltics together is 6 million people. Estonia is the smallest country with 1.3 million population. So these are our sales numbers from 2018. It was about 277. The table is about one-way packages, which is about 85% of the whole volume. In addition, there is 15% of refillable glass. So the sales was around 277 million, returns of around 240 million, and the PT return rate around 85.5%, can return of 96 last year, and one-way glass around 89.8% compared. And in the brackets, you can see from 2007 the comparison. So, you know, taking our not so big population from day one, May 2005 till May 2019, 14 years of action, we have collected 3.8 billion, which for some other country would be a good year. But for us, it's a very good result that has been collected, and not just collected, but also fully recycled. To my mind, what are the keys to a successful deposit system? Clearly, non-profit principle. It is not profit for retailers. It is not profit for producers. This is their social and environmental awareness theme, which is enforced naturally, usually, by the government side. It must be non-for-profit. It must be under producer control, the producer's responsibility organization. If the producers are in control of the system, it's clear that they are also willing to invest into the system and also to develop it, to have it on a long and sustainable way. Stakeholders' involvement, already talked about. Producers, retailers as partners from day one in the same on the same table, around the same table, and talking about solutions, talking about cooperation, starting with transport, collection, etc. So it is about collaboration. This is not. I always say that. That the table of the deposit system, the supervisory board table of the deposit system, everyone has to leave its everyday chairs and hats behind the door. This is about the nation, about the collection, about the environment, not about everybody's business interests. And this is how actually it starts to work quite well after, let's say, 6 to 12 months when the system is started. Correct initial setup, already also a little bit talked about, the number of handling centers, the functioning, the legislation, logistics, collection infrastructure. What is, you have to, I always say that 60 to 70% of the system is the same, but you always have to look into country specifics. Is it more rural area? What kind of specific logistics solutions, for example, in a rural area, etc., etc. There are a million details that have to be considered, and that's why always take little time to look into the collection, into the local conditions, and never just copy paste. Take and learn from the best, but make your own system. Controlling, clearly, one of the cornerstones of a deposit system, meaning you have to control the producers, importers, you have to control the retailers, also a little bit the consumers, but basically you have to have a very good IT system and the platform procedures logic for the controlling side, so that the minimum would be applied for the fraud. And it's clearly a constant awareness building towards the public and stakeholders. It's not enough that you start the system and the first year you collect whatever 80% already, maybe next year 90, but you have to keep these numbers. You have to constantly keep dialogue with the consumers to show how well they have done, and to have a constant dialogue about what we can do as next step, what they can do better, so to keep up the volume. Because when we started the system, our marketing was 100% about get your money back. Come here, get your money back. But now I think already for the last 5 years, we have not used that at all in our marketing. Now it's more about what we have done together for our country, how much tonnage we have saved, how much tonnage we have sent for recycling, etc., etc. It is now more about the environmental spectrum rather than the financial one. All right, but I think my time is also over, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Rano. We'll keep the slide a couple of more minutes for people to write your contacts, but then I invite you to stop sharing your screen so that we can see you. There are a lot of questions of clarification on the Estonian model. I'll try to drop a few of them, but I'll keep some others for the conversation right after Cesar's presentation. So there are a few questions. One of them relates to the potential of promoting reusable packaging. You've mentioned briefly that DRA schemes promote also reusable packaging. And Begonia from Spain, I assume, is asking, could you please share the numbers in Estonia? Do you have any data? Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe the simplest data is right now. I can't tell you immediately that how many millions were put on the market of refillables before. But a very simple number that comes to my mind immediately is that when we started in 2005, before that we had roughly 2, maximum 3 refillable different types. Basically, we had 3 types of refillable bottles on the market, and today we have around 13 to 15 different types of refillables from 3 to 4 different producers. So, it has helped to develop new refillable bottles, and some of the products have shifted into that. And I hope that answers at least partially the question.
Yes, thank you very much. There are a few questions on how the system works. So, for example, what level of fraud did you see at the beginning, and how did you handle it?
As I said, we just kind of copy-pasted the system from Norway and Sweden, and at that time there it was quite different society. So we totally ignored the Estonian 2005 cultural aspects, meaning fraud. And we had a lot of issues in the beginning, during the first 2 years at least, with fraud. What we did, for example, is that there was a set of controlling logics, but number one, there was a full specification, technical specification worked out for RVMs, meaning that we only accepted a new machine into the market when it was inspected by our personnel, because it's not just that you go to China or somewhere and you just buy a machine and you plug it, because it has to have shape recognition, weight recognition, What I mean is, for example, if you don't have a shape recognition in a RVM, what it means, you take your shoe, you put your EN code, you take a bottle of, I don't know, Coke, you put the EN code on your shoe and it goes through the machine. So you always have to have like weight recognition, then barcode mixed with the shape, etc. That was one of the biggest challenges that we totally overlooked in the beginning. And then now we have like 40, 50 page RVM specifications that have to meet the targets. Or like random checks at retail shops, because sometimes, you know, the retailers are very good partners of us, don't get me wrong. But sometimes they're backdoor people who work in the backstage, who are not seen in the sales hall. They have too much time and they are too innovative. So we always do this and did this random checks. Hello, we are here. We would like to see your collection point. And sometimes with that, we found some very kind of like genius engineers who had like manipulated some sensors or whatever. So these kinds of small things that you have to tackle. I hope it answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. There are a few questions that relates to the EPR and DRS connection, but I'd like to keep it for after, because I think we're going also to hear some comments on this later. There was a few questions on the model, and there's apparently some appetite for the use of blockchain or virtual money to pay, as Estonia is also a country quite known for being very advanced on all these topics. Do you also foresee like an evolution and going through more digital money when it comes to DRS?
Okay, that's a very good topic, because I'm just now working in our neighboring country who is just discussing, Latvia, who is discussing deposits, and this is a hot topic that how could we get our money back digitally? It is a so-so thing in that sense. We have had these discussions already, I think 6-7 years ago, and we were really willing to do it like straight, it goes to your bank account. But to be very honest, there is this small issue of retailers have made an investment into the collection point. And actually, when the money, they are interested that this money is spent, this deposit money is spent in their shops. So until now, they have not been very reluctant to implement all of these possibilities which are there. But what is coming more and more is like, for example, retailers are kind of integrating their loyalty cards to the deposit. So basically, you go to an RVM, you can, these solutions that are already on the market, you can just transfer your deposit return money on the loyalty card, and next time you go to the shop or the same day you go to the shop, you can use there. So yes, there are different possibilities, but at first step, you'd like to say, hooray, let's have it today. But in practice, sometimes there are these small details that kind of background business logic or financial logic details that make it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, thank you very much. I keep all the other questions on cross-border deposit return schemes and etc. But I think they're really interesting for all of our speakers. And I will actually make a connection between one of your last comment on the communication aspect, because I think we're going to hear a lot from Cesar when it comes to how do we communicate about DRS systems, and diving a bit more into the case of the a Spanish best practice. So thanks a lot, Rauno, and I'm happy to move to Cesar for the last panel, the last presentation. And thanks everyone for your questions. We're trying to keep up with all of them. Keep using the Q&A box, and we'll come back to you after Cesar's presentation. Cesar, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ezra, Agnes, and to all the ZWE family. Thanks for the opportunity. And I'm gonna try to be very short, as Clarice and Rauno has explained the thick and thin of DRS. I'm just gonna try to add something from my perspective. I'm a communications director here in Spain from Retorna. Retorna is a platform of NGOs that advocate for zero waste policies, and that also advocates for a deposit and return system here in Spain. So from a communications point of view, our main challenge here has been since 2011, try to explain to people what is a DRS, what is a deposit and return scheme, taking into account that we don't have a deposit and return system since the 80s here in Spain. So the real challenge was to explain a tool, a thing that we don't know. Most of the people can't remember or don't really know. And we have take the challenge, and we have come up with an communications strategy. And that is, we don't need to focus on deposit and return system. We wanted mainly to focus on the solution, or on the good things that the deposit and return scheme can give. And here in Spain, we have 6,000 kilometers of shore. So marine litter and the health of our seas and our beaches and our oceans is a key thing. So everyone loves beaches, everyone loves seas, everyone loves the oceans. Everyone has good memories involving seas, beaches, oceans, even politicians, all stakeholders. So we have put marine litter and the sake of oceans into the key of our communications. So at the end of the day, all our efforts in communications-wise is to get people, everyone, to understand that it is about to save the sea. And DRS can be a very unique and effective tool in order to achieve that. Here in my presentation, I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna try to be short, and I'm gonna try to explain 10 tips in order to communicate what is a deposit and return system, what are their benefits, and to know the main aspects of a deposit and return system, and try to communicate in a proper way, just so everyone can understand. Okay.
I think, Cesar, there's your headphones that make some noise, maybe the Bluetooth. I don't know if you can.
I can try to swap and stop using the headphones and just do it like that. Okay. Hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry for the trouble.
No worries. Thank you.
I'm trying to jump to my presentation. So I was saying, we have put marine litter and the health of our seas into the making it the key of our communications, and we have tried to link deposit schemes as the main solution to solve that big challenge. Okay, and this is a very good fact. Deposit schemes can reduce drink containers in the ocean by 40%. This is from an Australian project, and it is a very, very, very good key figure to understand how important and how efficient can be a deposit scheme related to marine litter problem. And I wanna show a best practice here in Spain, in the Balearic Islands. We have been discussing a waste law involving deposit and return scheme. It was passed last month of October, I think, including a deposit and return system, and we have been campaigning there with a platform of NGOs, and we have been using this this image. I'm going to show to you this little video. The name of the campaign in Spanish is, in English, sorry, is For a Sea Without Plastic, okay? So our main purpose was to put sea and marine litter as the main message of our campaign. And after that, try to link that to the solutions and to a deposit and return scheme. We have been doing some trials, and we have been visiting some big holidays, fairs, and so on. And we have tried to put in place a little incentive driven scheme. And It has worked very well, and that was in Palma de Mallorca, the main city of Mallorca, the main island of the Balearic Islands. And we've been offering 10 cents for every can and bottle beverage container during a big public holiday, and that was the result. And I'd like also to show a little video that I think it clarifies how easy it is to link deposit and return scheme with a free container and free waste environment. We've been doing this trial in the Plaza Mayor, on the below of your screen during the whole night, and you can see the result. The image from above of the screen is from the street surrounding this big square where we were, and you can see difference between one system and the other one. I think it's a good example. So I start with my 10 tips to communicate a DRS. And as I was saying, the main one is to show the purpose. Start always showing the purpose. And the purpose is for us, if you give value to waste and to beverage containers, the result is going to be money on your pockets and a clean environment. It is as easy as that. It is the best way to people to understand. It takes 5 seconds to understand that a can, a bottle has a value, so no one is gonna drop it. And if someone does, there always been another people just ready to collect that and to get back the money. Second tip, it is important to explain always what is a deposit and return scheme, because maybe we think everybody understands what it is, but we try always to make people remember the basics of a deposit and return scheme. It is for soft drinks, juices, beers, and waters, and we propose a 10-cent deposit here in Spain, okay? And it works for either one way or refillables. 3 tip, why? Clarissa has talked about that. It is a system that can help to the current systems just to improve, just to solve the things, the on-the-go consumption that is causing major problems right now. So it works mainly for the outdoor consumption, fields, beaches, parks, for the type of beverage that we already said. And it can work, it works in all the regions in the world where deposit and return schemes it is implemented. It works with curbside, curbside systems, door-to-door collection systems, or wherever. It is always important to remember this is a story of success. Clarissa also told you that plus 90% of return average here in Spain, but also in other parts of the world, USA, Canada, Australia, everywhere. So it works, and people really understand that it works from the moment that they think about something that it isn't garbage, waste, something for disposal anymore, since the moment you give it an economic value. 5 point important always to remember, it works both, as we were saying, for recycling and for reuse. It is important to make that clarification, and we like to talk about Germany, where 45% of beverage are sold in reusable containers that can be refilled up to 50 times if we are talking about glass, but also for plastic containers, refillable plastic containers, they can be reused up to 15 times. And most of people doesn't know that. So it is important also to focus not only in recycling, but also in reusing. Every country, every experience can be different about recycling and reusing involving an deposit and return scheme. But there is one thing that is important, and it is key talking about this topic. It is there won't be reuse if there isn't a deposit scheme, and this is for sure. Sixth point, we have been able to collect some results from surveys and polls all over the world, back in the 70s and until right now. And the average support of people to deposit schemes is more than 80%. So it is something that people understand from the beginning that it works, and it is something that people feel proud to participate. And this personal touch, that this touch from people involved, we think from communication wise, it is very important to remind that is something that people like, and also this is a key of its success. People really get involved. Seventh thing, we try always to remind people, there is no cost for administrations, because one of the main questions is, okay, this is a super system, it works quite well, and it is a successful story around the world, but how does it cost? So there's no cost for administration. This is important to remember. And eight, as Clarissa has already explained, it gives savings to local administrations, to municipalities. You could find all the studies in Brilop's page, as Clarissa told, but this is a picture from Madrid, street bin in Madrid. So at the end of the day, the less you clean, the more savings you can get from a municipality point of view. 9 also involves retailers, and retailers in the countries with a deposit and return scheme. They are participating and they are getting their profits. So also important to retain that. It gives money for retailers, and we estimate that every retailer can get from 2 to 3 cents for every container that is collected. And 10, this is a very simple way to show you how is this possible, okay? Because everyone is looking for the trick, a very perfect system that works that way. So at the end of the day, if you want to explain how it works from an economic or financial point of view, you have to put on one column the expenses and on the other one the incomes. So the money, it comes from the not claimed deposits. So if you are collecting 85, 90%, there will be always a little part that of deposits that are not claimed. So this goes directly to fund the system, and also the raw material you collect and you can sell, and the fee that EPR fee that the industry has to put. And on the other part, these incomes goes to fulfill the expenses of the system that are mainly the money that is paid to retail, the logistics, and the administrations. So at the end of the day, it is a neutral system with no gains and no losses, and everyone is in balance. So this is it, basically. I'm gonna give some space for questions and give you the opportunity to go through all the questions. And always in communications, you have to add a good ending. So main of our presentations and communications just ends with a simple question: who is gonna be next? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cesar. Thanks for the who's going to be next. I think we have a few comments from Polish participants who I think would like to see Poland being the next country. So yeah, I invite you to stop sharing your screen. There's one question from the communication aspect before we go through the more general questions. Like, which channel would you use mostly for this kind of successful campaign? to get people attracted. We have this image of the two place. Yes. So what would be the main channels?
So sorry, I didn't get you well, Ezra.
Yeah, sorry. Which channels do you use mostly for successful communication? It's one of the questions from a participant.
Yeah, nowadays, as we are an NGO and we don't have big budgets as Green Dot Systems here in Spain, for example, we try to make use of social media mainly. Okay, so we try to collaborate and try to spread the word using all platforms that we can use, meaning all the NGOs that make a part of the platform, all the stakeholders that are advocating also for DRS, even if they come from industry and so on. And also, we have developed a good relationship with journalists, and we try to be on the media, making attractive contents, and try to reach all kind of medias. The video that I just showed, this is from Baleares, as I said, so we have to be in touch with the local media. It is important also to reach not only the main journals or TV stations and so on, but also develop a good network with local medias. But at the end of the day, it is social media, good communication between all the NGOs, associations, and members that are reaching for the same goal, just to be effective and to try to spread the word the best way, the best possible way, and consider all the possibilities that media gives you. Not only aim for the big ones, but also try to reach the local ones.
Thank you. There's another question from participant called Begonia. Cesar, how can you achieve a 90% recycling rate when 50% of the incomes of the scheme come from non-returned packaging?
I think this is a question. This is stats that can be that you can go to check to in every region that a DRS is existing. But I can go back to my presentation, if you allow me, Ezra.
Yes, for 1 minute. Yeah.
So the important thing here is these arrows. Okay, if these arrows, these are not steady columns. I mean, if the number of deposits, I mean, Germany is working with 98.5% of return of 98.5 return average of all the beverage containers. So if this goes down, that means that you have more raw material to sell, and the more efficient the system is, the more effective it becomes. But as I was saying, all the data from the existing regions with deposit and scheme systems are available, and maybe Bruno or Clarissa can reply to that question better than me.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you stop sharing your screen for now?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Cesar, for your presentation. I want to go through some of the questions. There's a lot of questions asked, and I think that, yeah, some of them are really detailed questions. Yes, we're going to share the presentation, and we're also going to share the case from Estonia. That was one of the requests. But I'd like maybe to take a step back and go through some of the big questions that we had. There was one on the connection between EPR and DRS. So I invite the Bruno and Clarissa as well to unmute yourself to be able to jump in. we had actually 3 or 4 participants saying, do you need to have an EPR beforehand and then you put in place a DRS? How these two systems, they work together. Another participant from Latin America is asking, are there some products for which it's better to have a DRS and maybe the other have an EPR system? So how do you see first a connection between these two incentives?
Maybe I'll start by clarifying, and there's actually an article written about this on our website under published articles, that DRS is EPR in most jurisdictions. It's a producer responsibility scheme where producers are effectively responsible for producers and their customers for 100% of financing, operating, managing, and are liable for the success of that program. So DRS is EPR, and so is a green dot system. It's also EPR, and so is a tire return system is also EPR. So they're all forms of EPR. The only difference with DRS is that it provides an economic incentive to incentivize collection, and that's what makes it unique. So yes, you could apply a deposit to other items as an option if it makes sense. But to date, we haven't had a lot of deposit systems on consumer products. There are a lot of deposit systems on transport packaging, industrial packaging, batteries in cars, larger items, but we haven't really seen a lot of deposit systems on smaller, more problematic items. Not to say it's not absolutely possible. You just need a marking system and some sort of automation to make sure that you can not have a lot of fraud in the system. So you need a marking system. You need to be centrally having a clearinghouse for all the information, and that marking system has to be good. So yes, you could do batteries, but you'd have to have a marking system to put on those batteries. So the more traditional apply is to apply to beverage containers, and we've obviously seen a lot of success. There are many, many countries that have an existing green dot system for household packaging or other packaging and deposit system. I can name 10 off the top of my head right now. Most European countries do. Most of Canada does. America doesn't have much EPR on packaging anyway, so we'll just not talk about them. So yeah, completely compatible. And in fact, in many jurisdictions, they work really well together. Rano?
Well, you covered most of it. Yeah,
but you've had firsthand experience with
regarding
Estonia.
it's clear that the deposit is an EPR itself. It is an extended producer responsibility organization, and as I said in my presentation, also that the systems are needed parallel anyway, and the deposit system is mainly the answer for the circular economy from the beverage industry side, which doesn't mean that some kind of a similar logic couldn't be used for car batteries, for example, or some other items. But it would have to be, the design would have to be a little bit different. But the element of deposit as itself can be naturally used in also other areas, but it can't be like one system, because tires is totally different, or car batteries is something totally different from a beverage product.
Thank you very much. There's another question that had a subtle sub-question in it. One of the participants asked, DRS glass versus bottles, and I think this goes back to the question of like one-way packaging or reusable, and maybe the compatibility between the two systems. So as we said in the introduction, here we cover both aspects, the single-use and refillables, but yeah, is there one that is better than the other? That's a bit the implicit question here. And how the two systems work actually, or how are they compatible?
Okay, I can answer, but was it more about one-way refillable? I think it was more about, is it plastic or glass?
Yes, there was this one, and then there was another one that just about refillables. Yeah.
Okay, I can answer. So basically, if we talk about, is it deposit system about only PET bottles or can or glass? So well, it depends on the country. It depends on the politicians, how they have decided. You know, for example, Norway has only PET and PET and cans in the system. The same goes for Sweden. In Estonia, in Lithuania, we have 3 items, glass included also as a third item. So it depends on the legislation, on the discussions. But for me, from the littering point of view, to be honest, I quite don't understand the difference. Is it plastic? Is it can, or is it glass? If it's a beverage package, it can be left there somewhere. It has different impacts. If plastic can be blown away with wind to the seas and the oceans, then, for example, in Estonia, we had, and in many countries, we have had an issue in the summertime that glass is usually broken in the beaches. And you should kind of like give a price to that, a deposit that you can minimize the threat that it will end up in beaches and then will destroy your legs or etc. So in that sense, it's for me, there is no difference from that perspective. But if we talk about one way and refillables, then for me, again, it's the same logic. It's if it's a beverage package, it doesn't matter if it's one way or refillable, it should be under the system anyway. And if there are more packages, like not just PET or can, but also PET can and glass, it clearly gives you cost advantages from the financial perspective, from the collection infrastructure point of view. For example, if you have built the infrastructure to meet, 1 billion packages to collect, or 1.5 billion packages, there are some items, some investments that you can divide between these bigger amounts, and it gives you efficiency per unit.
Thank you. Any other addition from Cesar or Clarissa? No? Okay. I just want to maybe, Cesar, you mentioned that in the project that in the Balearics you were also pushing or putting also the question of reuse and refillables. So is there like a different strategy or what is the idea behind?
No, I mean, for us, as Bruno was saying, it is the same. An empty container shouldn't be around. Should be collected and should be, it is the best of the cases reused. And if not, if it is one way, it should be turned into a new container. This is not happening here in Spain. I mean, I have some data here from reusable here in Spain that I'd like to share. We have a consumption of about 19,000 millions of beverage containers per year, from which 82% are one way and only 88% are reuse, that only works in Horeca channel. This rate of reuse in Horeca channel has dropped during the last years 35%. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we advocate for a DRS just to, first thing, avoid containers to end up in a landfill, in an incineration plant, or in the base of the cases, abandoned around. And at the same time, a deposit and return system, it is the best way to open a new market for refillable. Unfortunately, it is up to the producers to use refillable containers. So we all, I mean, me as a user, as a consumer, I'd like to find here in Spain reusable containers. And at the end of the day, as I was saying, a deposit and return system, it is the best way to achieve that. But in our communications, for us, as I was saying, the main thing is to avoid littering. And if a deposit and return system can do that, and on top of that, can open the door to refillable, to more refillables in our supermarkets. So yeah, great.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add something to
yes,
that
please.
really quickly? I think everybody that's interested in refillables, everything that Cesar said is right. But the reality is we have to create other economic incentives to get producers to switch back to refillables. There's opportunity in the new legislation which was passed, the Waste Framework Directive, and the Packaging Directive specifically calls for member states to put economic instruments to favor reuse, or to implement a mandatory market share minimum at a national level. That's in Article 5, and it's a very powerful tool. So we need to talk now, beyond the deposit discussion, we need to talk about how do we make refillable bottles more attractive to producers and to consumers so that we can start to see those declining refillable shares across the globe changing and reversing, and we can start to see. But truthfully, when producers start paying for deposit systems, they're finally internalizing the costs of management that they've never internalized when it comes to single-use containers. So we're starting to level the playing field, because for all these years in so many countries, producers of beverage containers are only paying yet a fraction of the cost that they should be paying to properly manage their containers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this clarification. I think Agnese is going to share again the ZWE hierarchy that we recently published that also puts back this idea. And indeed, we need to use the current push of the legislation to make that happen and keep pressure going. I have a very last question that came up, I think it was during the presentation of Rauno. So you mentioned from the beginning that most of this packaging are on-the-go containers. So there was a question about, is there any very good working cross-border deposit systems for people who would be traveling or taking single-use beverages from one country to the other? And do we know anything about this? Is there anything cooking somewhere in Europe or elsewhere in the world?
Larissa, you want to answer that?
No, I don't, because I don't know of any, but you would be better to answer that. Like in your region, maybe? Your region? Estonia, Latvia?
Yeah, well, there has been, well, to be honest, I think there are no good examples of cross-border depositing, basically, because it has been an issue in many countries, and many times, regarding even like a pan-European deposit system. I personally don't believe in it because unfortunately or fortunately, I see the kitchen side of very many different deposit systems, and there are so many country-specific peculiarities that we don't have time to get into that. That makes it a bit difficult to have like a cross-border deposit system, but it's not impossible in the future, I think, regards some areas. But now my answer is very vague because at the moment there is no evidence of a cross-border deposit system, to my mind, that works efficiently. But it's definitely something of an issue on a wider scale for the future to see at least up to some extent cooperation. For example, okay, one small cooperation thing is like in Estonia, we have 10 cents deposit level, and we do very close cooperation with our neighboring country, Lithuania, in the Baltics. And for many details, we cooperate, including the deposit fee, for example, to avoid such cross-border packages, empty packages movement. We have unified the deposit level, but that is just a small cooperation example, which is not what you are looking for an answer.
Thanks very much. I think it means there's also potentially a market, despite the differences between countries, but it may be at least at the sub-regional or for some brands as well. This could be something that might happen in the future. So we have a lot of extra questions, but I'm sorry, we really need to close here to keep it for an hour and a half. There was an initial comment from the beginning, someone saying, referring to the global plastic waste dumping. And that we do also referring to the UN regulation. Recently as well, our global network has published a report called Discarded. So we're really aware of also what recycling means. Sometimes our recycling is not effectively recycled. So so we're also very looking into that aspect of the change. So the person was commenting saying, is it enough to have a DRS while we'll still send our waste to Asian countries? So I think it's part of a broader conversation. So thanks a lot to the three of you for your presentations, for your answers, for your input. I think we're a lot clearer on the potential of DRS now. And I hope that we managed to give some ideas to the participants, some of them were saying that they were hoping to see this in their countries. Final announcement. So now we'll have the summer break, so we won't have any webinars for the next 2 months, but please register to our city's newsletter to be informed about the fall webinars. And again, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to be with you all, and hope to see you soon. Thank you, everyone.